Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being with us tonight for this candidate forum for the Assembly District 18 special election. My name is Rachel Foodman with the Oakland League of Women Voters. This forum is being co-sponsored by the Oakland, Alameda, and Eden Area Leagues of Women Voters and by the MLK Freedom Center. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, but we do not support or endorse candidates or parties. This forum is presented by the Voter Service and Education arm of the League, and we encourage audience members to consider becoming members of their local league. Before I turn things over to our moderator, I'd like to ask our representatives from the MLK Freedom Center to introduce themselves and the center. Students from the MLK Freedom Center will be asking tonight's forum questions. Please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Jada, and I have been a part of the MLK Freedom Center for over 1.5 years. The Martin Luther King Jr. Freedom Center works to strengthen and protect our democracy, along with expand social and economic justice through the preparing and educating of young people to become active participants in a fair and equitable democratic process. And now the rest of my teammates will introduce themselves.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Ursa, and I've been with the Freedom Center for almost 2 years.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Favor Asu, and I've been with the Freedom Center for 5 months.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mabel Minnie, and I've been a student at the Freedom Center for just over a year.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I wanted to thank you all for being here and joining us tonight. My name is Serena Rai, and I've been a student of the Freedom Center for almost 1.5 years now.
We really appreciate you being here. What I'm going to be doing first is just giving you the nuts and bolts of this evening's event. We will be beginning with opening statements. Each candidate will have the opportunity to give a 2-minute statement, and we will begin in the order of the ballot because I figured the Secretary of State already did the random selection process for us, so we would take it from there. Once opening statements are completed, then we will move on to the questions that will be provided by our students, which we really appreciate their being here. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond, and then they will have an opportunity to do a 1-minute closing. So not everyone will get a chance to go first, but we'll get as close to as possible. We are expecting, we have 8 candidates here today, 7 of which are on the ballot. 1 is a write-in candidate, so this is something that we don't always see, so that's great. I also wanted to let you know that one of our candidates was unavailable to attend this evening because they are actually taking care of their elected responsibility this evening. So what we did to ensure that you, our audience, and had the opportunity to hear from as many candidates as possible is this afternoon, they recorded their statements and their responses over Zoom, and we will slip their recordings in at their slotted times. So we want to thank everyone who worked to make this happen. And we also want to thank the candidates for their flexibility in this because we know it's important and we know that they appreciate having our attendees, our voters, hear from everyone as much as possible. So with that, I think we will just get going because we do have, we only have a brief amount of time here. Just so you in the audience know, each candidate, when the questions come up, will be able to see the questions from their screen, and they will also have the timer, and we will be adhering very closely to that just to let the candidates know. So I think with that, we can go ahead and begin the forum. So for our first opening statement, we will be hearing from Mia Bonta.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and to the students of the MLK Freedom Center for hosting us this evening. I'm Mia Bonta. I'm the daughter of a socialist father and a democratic activist mother who named me after a revolutionary as a mark of the time and their hopes for the future. As activists, my parents were making the same demands for justice that the Black Panthers were making right here in Oakland, policing the police, a right to housing, food security, and equity in education. And still 50 years later, they're the same things that we're all fighting for today. My parents taught me about the power of advocacy through service, and I've been fighting for our children and East Bay communities for over 25 years. I come to my work in our community and this assembly seat, not from theory of lens, not from a theory or a lens, but from my own lived experience and the translation of the experience into solutions that make a difference, because I see myself in so many of our brothers and sisters. I grew up experiencing what it was like to watch a strong Black Latina woman who worked every day of her life, but still had to make some trade-offs at the end of the month between paying the rent, paying a doctor's bill, or putting food on the table. I worked my way through college and law school and still graduated with $154,000 in student loan debt with my partner in life and partner in service. I'm working for the East Bay children and families. I've seen our community displaced, dismissed, and dying at the hands of supposed protectors and trapped by the systems that weren't really built for us to succeed. I set up my business in West Oakland, working to ensure our communities had digital access, and currently serve as school board president in Alameda. And I work every day to fulfill the promise of scholarships and college opportunity for Oakland's children. I'm running for assembly because we here in AD 18 can no longer be displaced from the State House. The East Bay has not seen a Black woman to Sacramento since the Honorable Barbara Lee, and it is such an honor to have Barbara Lee's endorsement in this race. I'm running because we have work to do, and our representation, our experience, and our voice matters now more than ever. And as your state representative, I will be an advocate to help our families recover from COVID.
Thank you. We've hit our 2 minutes, so thank you very much.
Can you,
All right.
I'm not clear, just for, I'm not really sure where the timer is. It would be helpful to have that.
Oh, okay. I think you do. Okay, so for you and other candidates, thank you for letting us know. If you scroll across the top, because I had to go looking for mine as well, then you will find there is a spot where you will be able to see the timer up in your upper row. At least that's what it is on my screen. Oh, okay, well, Keisha will work on that. How's that?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for letting us know then, because so what I will do in the meantime, I will watch the clock and let you know when you're getting close. Okay, so next we will hear from Joel Britton. I hope I said that last name correct. It looks like Joel was unable to attend, so we will move on to Jennani Ramachandran.
Thank you. My name is Jennani Ramachandran. I'm a social justice attorney, an activist, a former Oakland Public Ethics Commissioner, and a proud resident of Oakland's beautiful District 2. And I'm running for California State Assembly because we don't need just another corporate Democrat. We need a bold leader who is willing to fight for true progressive reform and stand up to corporate power. My grandparents immigrated to this country from a small South Indian village without a dollar or a degree, just a dream of a better life. And thanks to the strength of their labor unions, they were able to lift our families out of poverty, gain economic stability, healthcare, a stable pension. But that so-called American dream does not exist anymore. Half of Californian families living in poverty work a full-time job. A third of Californians do not have real healthcare, and 3 million cannot afford to pay rent next month, starting the day after this special election when the eviction moratorium expires. And this is why I am driven to fight for tenant protections that allows people to stay in their neighborhoods and not be displaced because of gentrification. I am fighting for a 10-year plan to address homelessness, which has risen right here in Oakland by over 50% in the past 2 years. I am fighting for economic opportunity, a $22 minimum wage, and equity in contracting. I am fighting to end qualified immunity for police officers who cause harm and invest instead in the life-saving community violence intervention programs like the 3 nonprofits I work for right here. And I am driven to run because of the people who are left out of this system that I have worked with. Teen moms, victims of violence, people in mental health crisis, elderly tenants facing eviction right here in Oakland. And I would love for you all to join me in this journey for justice. Join us to fight for justice in California. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Malia Vella.
Good evening. My name is Malia Vella. I'm a workers' rights attorney, a professor at Mills College, and the vice mayor of the city of Alameda. I was first elected in 2016 when we were engaged in a fight for tenants' rights, making sure that our community members, some of whom were our most vulnerable community members, were not displaced. In my time as vice mayor of the city of Alameda, I've made sure that we've raised the minimum wage. We have protected our tenants through rent caps and just cause eviction protections, as well as providing build affordable housing. In fact, we've built more affordable and workforce housing in the city of Alameda in the last 4 years than we have in the last 2 decades. Additionally, we've made sure that we have a just recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. These are the types of things that I want to champion at the state level. As we've built our housing in the city of Alameda, we've made sure to do so with 100% electrification, taking into account sea level rise and making sure that we're funding our parks and our transportation demands through 100% upgrades to our fleets, including expansion of our AC transit bus routes, as well as expansion of our ferry service. We need to make sure that as we're building homes for Californians, we're also expanding our transportation options, funding public transit, and making sure that we have tenant protections so that folks don't get displaced. Please think about looking at my campaign, www.maliavella.com. I'm endorsed by the Legislative Women's Caucus, the API Caucus, Oakland Rising Action, Bay Rising Action, and the Oakland Latino Task Force, as well as many elected officials.
Well, that went pretty well, I think. First time having to do that. So next we will hear from James Aguilar.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And good evening, everyone. And thank you to the students. I love seeing students come and help moderate these forums. My name is James Aguilar. I was raised in Oakland, just a walk away to Glenview Elementary School and a bus ride away to Edna Brewer Middle School. I'm a product of Oakland Public Schools, so a lot of my perspective was built off of the many years I spent in Oakland's system. I was raised under a union family. You know, I had parents who worked for Safeway and were organizers in UFCW Local 5. Now, of course, it was Local 870 back then. But you know, we were a family that lived under a landlord that didn't care my mom was experiencing health issues because of mold he wouldn't deal with, or that we were low income, struggling to make it month by month. And that's a similar sentiment that we've felt for a very long time. So we decided it's time to get up on out of there, and we headed towards San Leandro. And that's really where we started a new beginning. And that's where I cemented a newfound career in public education and in youth activism. I started out during high school, the student board member and the first openly gay person to sit on the San Lorenzo school board. And we fought like hell to make sure that we were able to revise things like a 1980s dress code, implement ethnic studies, and make sure that we were moving forward as a district. And then I learned something. I learned that we're the 5th largest economy in the world, yet we're 41st in the nation, adjusted for cost of living, for per pupil spending of our public schools, yet we can spend $70,000 per prisoner. As a student, it didn't make sense, and as an adult, it still doesn't make sense. But nonetheless, I felt empowered by that and my experiences to run for school board, because we need school board members to advocate for education, which is the foundation of how we're going to address many of the issues that we're talking about. So that's why I'm running for state assembly. I'm running for our educators. I'm really running for you, running for our community. And should I be given the chance, I hope to advocate for that. And I thank you for this
very
time.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, and we will now hear from Victor Aguilar.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Victor Aguilar. Thank you to the Martin Luther King Jr. Freedom Center, to the students that are involved in this process, and to the League of Women Voters. I'm running for California State Assembly because I believe that every Californian deserves universal health care, affordable housing, and justice. That's not just a slogan. Those are my core values. I was raised in a union household by parents whose families immigrated from Mexico. My parents taught me how to respond to hard times with a love for family, community, and a passion for social justice. As San Leandro's first openly gay vice mayor, I have championed progressive policies that make a lasting difference in people's lives, from hazard pay for grocery workers, rent stabilization, and civilian police oversight. This pandemic has really affected us all. My family are frontline workers. I lost my loving mother to COVID-19. Her hospital bills were over $800,000. Without medical coverage from her union job, my father would have not only lost his wife, but he would have been financially devastated. To me, it's simple. California's response to COVID-19 would have been different if we prioritize people over profits. I will fight tirelessly for universal single-payer healthcare. I will champion affordable housing. I will be a voice for racial, economic, and environmental justice. I refuse to take donations from corporations. Visit victor4ca.com to learn more about how I would address these issues. Your vote has the power to make change. Vote for victory. Vote for Victor. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you. Okay, we will now hear from Stephen Slauson.
Good evening. I'm Stephen Slauson. I'm the Republican candidate for Assembly District 18. I was born in Alameda. I have lived in Alameda all my life. My company, Triple S Electric, has been providing construction services for the community for 45 years. I am still working. I just started another company called Badland Records. I produced and released our first album, Dirty Old Man, and we are working on a tour. I have been concentrating my campaign on restarting the California economy and eliminating or reducing the violence that's tearing our community apart, and concentrating on reducing the taxes which are killing everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay, we'll get the clock is set, and now we will hear from Nelsie Bautista.
Hi, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to, of course, the youth.
Hey, Nelsie, I'm gonna ask you to wait for a second because the timer hasn't started yet. And again, no, not your fault. Just want to make sure we give everybody the right amount of time.
Thank you.
Okay, there you go.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you to the League of Women Voters. Thank you to the Martin Luther King Jr. Freedom Center. Love you, love you, love you. Thank you to the youth and to, of course, to the panelists and everybody here. I'm running, my name is Nelsie Bautista. I'm actually running as a write-in candidate to remind us all that most of the reformative work has been worked on and continues to be accomplished by the most marginalized communities, especially of color. I want to bust through the myths and stigmatization of our most vulnerable community members, especially those of the Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities that are plagued with the stigmas of being underserving of equity or the cause of our own problems, when that is just not true. In fact, it is the most vulnerable communities, poor, working class, and even middle class that have worked together to bring human rights, childcare, labor rights, women's rights, immigrant rights, and building the economy to the table and have conquered many struggles. These are the works and stories that I am uplifting, bringing to the table as I do each year to the state legislature as an organizer. I am running to show that even just the fraction of the work listed on my website was in fact done with little to no dollars, and that the educational reform, health and human services reform, the criminal justice reform, environmental reform, and overall budgetary reform were in fact feasible with little to no cost on the taxpayer, because they are reformative, and we have paved the way for a foundational rubric that can in fact be reformed. Please consider me as your write-in candidate for California State Assembly District 18. I will put my website link in the chat box. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, now we will go to our first question, and just a reminder to the candidates, you will have 90 seconds to respond to that. And Jennani Ramachandran will be our first respondent, and Ursa, I will hand it over to you to give the question.
Good evening again, and thank you again to all the candidates for being here. The first question is, what is the first bill you would introduce if elected to Assembly District 18?
Hi there. The first bill that I would introduce is a longer-term moratorium on evictions. Like I mentioned in my opening statement, the current statewide eviction moratorium expires on June 30th, the very day after the special election. SB 91, which was an extremely flawed eviction moratorium and rental relief program, allowed tens of thousands of individuals to be evicted during the middle of this pandemic. And frankly, that is the reason I chose to run for this seat. As an attorney, I was working with individuals who were being evicted from their home, elders in Oakland, families with who had children with disabilities, and they asked me, what state laws protect me? And I would have to tell them time and time and again, I'm sorry, our eviction moratorium does not go far enough. And because SB 91, our rental relief program, was so flawed, so most Californians, 60% of Californians who owed rental debt during the pandemic were not given any assistance. And that means the day after this special election, there are almost 3 million Californians who might experience eviction, which is going to lead to an eviction tsunami or whatever horrible word that has been coined. People are going to be displaced from their homes, and I would introduce a bill to do something about that immediately. The second bill that I would introduce.
I'm going to give you 15 more seconds because the timer was not on properly. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Oh, yes. And in addition to that, I would introduce legislation to increase the minimum wage to $22 an hour. Thank you.
Okay, sorry for the interruption. So I guess as a favor, if the candidates could wait till they see the clock go green before beginning, that will help us make sure that you all get equal amount of times. Our next respondent will be candidate Malia Vella.
Should say reintroduce. One would be the wealth tax, which Assemblymember Alex Lee has authored, and it's become a 2-year bill. But we need to make sure that everyone is paying their fair share, and our super rich, ultra rich are paying into our system to make sure that we can fully fund education, K through 12, as well as higher ed, and that we can make sure that we have affordable money for affordable housing and all of our other social service needs. This bill is a tax on folks who make more than $500 million a year, and certainly would go a long ways in terms of making sure that we take care of our most vulnerable. Additionally, one day after this special election, we see the end of SB 91 moratorium on rent increases and evictions for non-payment of rent related to the COVID-19 pandemic. We need to make sure that we address this and we don't see a tidal wave of displacement. So that is another thing that I would be hoping to introduce immediately, is some sort of emergency action to make sure that all of our tenants who through no fault of their own were not able to pay rent are protected and are able to stay in their homes.
Thank you. All right, now we will go to James Aguilar.
Okay, I was waiting for the timer. Thank you. Yeah, so it's interesting this term. We'll be elected in a term in which we will have to support bills and then, end up introducing legislation in 2022. Nonetheless, in that period of time, the bills I want to fight for, of course, are a wealth tax, a tax on the sale of luxury homes, an extended rent moratorium, things that are going to push the conversation on a lot of the issues that I'm promoting. But the first bill that I will introduce in the legislature will be the Full and Fair Funding of California Public Schools Act. So that we can, get our conversation straight on where we are in supporting public schools. We have to absolutely reprioritize the conversation. And with that, having a legislative conversation on how we're reforming Prop 13, a feat that some call impossible, but we have to if we're going to address many different issues. I also think, increased supports for our educators who have suffered through the pandemic, supports for direction of the state of California to our local school districts, after COVID in this massive recovery period that we're going to have, and ensuring that we work with union partners to elevate the conversation on ensuring that we're, making sure facilities and capital projects are 21st century and really pushing the envelope in California.
Thank you. Okay, now we will hear from Victor Aguilar.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I think, there are a few things. First, we need to make sure we extend the moratorium on eviction, and we also need to make sure that we're taking care of those who are not able to afford their rent during this pandemic. I would also make sure that I would, sign on to the CalCare Act, Assembly Bill 1400. I believe that every Californian should be guaranteed affordable, comprehensive, high quality healthcare. The pandemic has made the inequities of our healthcare systems clearer than ever. Too many families have needlessly suffered because they could not receive critical healthcare services. I envision a better plan where every Californian can get the care that they need when they need it, and supporting healthcare cost control systems, comprehensive single-payer universal healthcare for everyone, regardless of employment, income, immigration status, race, gender identity, or any other considerations. Funding for affordable and comprehensive mental health care services. We also need to make sure that we're lowering prescription drug prices, and improve healthcare access for underserved communities, and increase nursing and mental health services in our schools. I make sure we're dedicating state funding for county public hospital systems. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and next we will hear from Stephen Slauson.
Yes. My first bill in the legislature is to repudiate the unlawful and unconstitutional emergency powers Governor Newsom has assumed. Governor Newsom and his political cronies have wrecked the California economy. You've mentioned the problem with evictions. That's directly tied to the unconstitutional lockdown. The unemployment rate is unacceptable. It's the highest in the nation. We have 1 million people who are on unemployment and can't get their checks because he screwed up the unemployment department. So I want his powers limited, and I want them limited in a hurry.
Thank you. And now we will go to Nelsie Bautista.
Great. Yes. So we have seen cities across the state of California with as high as 40 to 50% unemployment rates. I will immediately seek to restore all the childcare facilities that were closed during COVID-19, because without childcare, families cannot go to work. So I definitely, as a parent-child advocate and an educational advocate, I will be definitely requesting full restitution for childcare facilities that were closed. I also want to increase the income eligibility cap for those in need of housing, food access, and social services programs under the CalWorks program. The eligibility requirement cap is actually still pretty low, and families need it to be increased in order to access all resources under CalWorks. Full restitution for the Veteran Affairs, Disability, and under disability rights. We have a large influx of veterans that will be returning from the Afghan war, and I do want to see some more SROs, HUD funding, federal HUD funding for us to apply for affordable housing, also to include our veterans and the disabled. I want to see an increased cap for Social Security income, and also for in-home support services. These are very important services that we need prior to COVID, during COVID, even post-COVID. I also want to see more funds into rapid responding for firefighters, EMT responders, community medic training, accompaniment for migrant children, and the reunification.
Okay, my screen is frozen, but I think the timer is probably up because it just shows it has just shown 4 seconds. So
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Excellent, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that.
No,
okay, and the final respondent on this question will be candidate Nia Bonta.
I would introduce the COVID recovery with equity extension bill that would really address the need to be able to address our economic, health, and educational impacts of COVID that we've experienced. The components of that would be to ensure that we extend the rental moratorium so that we can ensure that our renters are able to stay in their homes during this time. I would ensure that a part of that would be creating a revolving loan program for businesses and mortgage and mortgages, so that people who are traditionally locked out of traditional financing industry have the ability to access funds to be able to support themselves during this time. I would also institute a school district right sizing act, which would ensure that childcare centers and school district would be able to use this opportunity to fix the financial constraints that they suffer from for too long. And I would ensure that we're building out a mental health infrastructure that really puts community-based organizations at the center of the work that we need to do for our communities moving forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we will now go on to our second question. So we will be bringing up Serena Rye. There we go. Hi, Serena.
Good evening once again to all the candidates. Our second question is, what state level policy solutions do you support to address housing affordability and homelessness in California?
Thank you. And our first candidate to respond to this one will be Jennani Ramachandran.
So our homelessness crisis in Oakland is growing exponentially while other cities across the country have had their homelessness population decline. We have seen ours risen by over 50% in the past 3 years, and we need concrete solutions now. And the issue is not entirely funding alone. We spend over $13 billion as a state on homelessness solutions. But unfortunately, our state auditor herself has said this does not necessarily go to communities that are truly that are unhoused and are put into evidence-based programs. So I propose 3 things to address our homelessness crisis and housing affordability. And one, it's developing a 10-year strategic plan to address homelessness, not pockets of money thrown around to look politically good and to sound politically correct. We need to take into consideration the voices of the unhoused members. People are homeless for different reasons. You have some people who just missed a month's rent. You have other people who are survivors of domestic violence. In fact, 80% of women with children who are unhoused are survivors of domestic violence. You have teens who have run away from home because of violence in their households. And you have people with mental health illnesses and substance abuse issues. And we need concrete solutions that take these things into consideration. I would also ensure that redevelopment dollars are restored to our local jurisdictions so cities can afford to actually fund affordable housing. And to do so, we also need to repeal the state constitution's Article 34 to make it easier to actually fund affordable housing. And finally, a wealth tax on all individuals.
You started before the clock, so I'm going to cut you off there. So, sorry. If you could, so for the candidates, if you can please, it's a little tricky. We're balancing a few things behind the scenes. Before you start, if you can watch for the clock. If you can't see the clock, please let me know, and I will. Okay, there you go. So I will put in 30 seconds into your chat when we reach that. So if anybody else has not seen the clock, otherwise I will just do it for Mia and Jennani. Sorry, everyone. Thank you so much. Okay, so next we will be hearing from Malia Vella.
As a city council member, I've been working very hard on issues of housing and homelessness. In the past 4+ years, I've seen a number of projects where we've had a majority of the funding for affordable housing, but we're just missing one last piece of funding. So one thing that we need to change is how we go about funding affordable housing. Oftentimes, cities and counties have to make decisions amongst competing projects, and we need to change that. Once the project is ready to be funded, we should be able to dip into the state funding pool, get the vouchers and other funding that's available, and fully fund the projects, because the cost of construction continues to rise and the demand continues to rise. So it's something that we need to do. We've also seen very successful public housing projects. Our housing authority has done a great job here in the city of Alameda. And I very much support public housing at the state level as well. So that's something that we need to see expanded. It will allow for the continuation of permanent, affordable, and below market rate units, which is what we need. Additionally, we need to repeal the Ellis Act, and we certainly need to see stronger statewide protections, including the repeal of Costa-Hawkins, so that we don't see folks getting displaced as we see new units coming onto the market and gentrification.
Thank you. Now, next we will hear from James Aguilar.
All right. So first, I'll tackle the housing question. I think first and foremost, the state of California has got to have the funding resources necessary for cities and counties to build up. And in this conversation, when we talk about housing, I'm not talking about single family. I'm talking about dense, transit-oriented housing to make sure that not only are we providing housing for our low-income communities, but housing that is close to the centers that will get people where they need to go for work, where they need to get between school and recreation. I think that's highly important. But two, in the conversation, empowering cities and counties to look bolder at ADUs, accessory dwelling units. As in the Bay Area, we have tons of single family housing, yet lots of land and homes that could potentially serve as great lots for ADUs. I also, with homelessness, it's very close to me. It's personal. Some of my family has experienced homelessness. And some of the issues that I've seen that have been addressed have been through community-based organizations. So I want the state of California to step up and provide the funding necessary for those organizations to really step in where cities and counties can't, and also make sure that our government isn't really pushing our homeless population, out of encampments and into different cities, because then they're just displacing the issue and not really addressing the root cause.
Thank you. And next, we will hear from Victor Aguilar.
Thank you. Thank you for asking that question. I think, we are one of the richest states in California, one of the richest states in the nation. And I think Governor Newsom has recently proposed $12 billion in a 5-year strategic plan to help end homelessness. And this is something that I'm looking to partner with our governor to make sure that we're not just talking the talk, but we're actually walking the walk. Too many of our East Bay neighbors have been forced out of their homes. We must strengthen renter protections, build more affordable transit-oriented housing, and provide robust services to our unhoused neighbors. We need to remove barriers to home ownership and curb displacement. I have championed tenant protections throughout my time here in San Leandro on the city council. In the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, I've organized efforts to pass an eviction moratorium and was instrumental in ensuring rent control for mobile home parks here in San Leandro. And I would also advocate that, at the state. So we need stronger statewide protections. We need to reduce statewide barriers to tenant protections from the Costa-Hawkins and Alice Acts, such as Assembly Bill 854. We also need to make sure we have eviction restrictions for COVID-19 related rental debt. And we need to prioritize mixed income, affordable, multifamily, and multi-unit housing. We need to reduce barriers to safe, accessible, and affordable housing construction and support services and housing for unhoused Californians. And we also need to make sure we have cooperative housing models such as land trust and co-housing.
And that's your timing is up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we are going to hear from Stephen Slauson.
Yes, I am going to do my best to abolish all state activities regarding housing and homelessness. The state of California has not demonstrated any ability to manage anything. Homelessness can be managed very well on the local level. As an example, in the city of Oakland, there are 2 classes of homelessness: those who live in RVs and those who live in tents. All you need is an RV park. All you need is some small houses, which they're starting to build. For affordable housing, we need mobile home parks. There's plenty of land in the city of Alameda for that, and there's plenty of land in the city of Oakland for that. Just like the city of San Leandro has about 7 or 8 mobile home parks for the low-income people. They work very well. This is my position.
Thank you very much. And we will reset the clock. And then we will hear from Nelsie Bautista.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so this is a really serious topic also for me and very personal. As an organizer, a single mom who was previously homeless with my child, I will say this, that I have been very honored to work with Housing Coalition, Housing Justice Coalition on affordable housing. And in looking at Prop 13, it is current state law that they are only allowed to charge a 1 to 5% annual increase on property taxes. We have seen more than 10%, more than 15% annual property tax increases. I want to definitely hold the California Real Estate Association 100% accountable. I want to hold ABAG 100% accountable to make sure that they are enforcing those laws, that they do not exceed the actual 1 to 5% property tax increase. I also want to make sure that childcare facilities are exempt and that public schools are 100% exempt from the property tax increases every single year. And then, of course, support the repeal of Costa-Hawkins and also hold developers accountable for demolition fees. The city of Oakland has yet to charge developers demolition fees every single time they do new developments in the city of Oakland, and I want to hold them accountable for fees so we can put those fees into affordable housing. Thank you.
Okay, making every second count. That's what all our candidates should be doing. Okay, and they are. So thank you all for doing that. So next we will hear from Mia Bonta. And Mia, I'll let you know when the timer is ready, and then you'll receive 30-second notice in your chat.
I will advance legislation that creates new affordable housing and ensures current homeowners and renters can afford to stay in their homes here in the East Bay. As someone who faced housing insecurity as a child, I understand the urgency of keeping families in their homes and protecting tenants. I will also support programs that assist first-time home buyers so that they have access to loans and other resources to make homeownership a reality. We have to grow our housing pipeline. We have a deficit of 185,000 extremely low income rental units in our Bay Area counties. And by looking at different financing tools and preserving the affordable housing that we have, we can do this. We also have the ability to have a coordinated regional model to address homelessness. And we have a proposal from organizations like All Home, which has presented a regional action plan that would enable us to reduce homelessness by 75% in 3 years. We need to fund more interim housing. We need to promote more permanent housing through more rent subsidies and supportive housing. And we need to keep at-risk families housed with greater interventions like financial assistance coupled with legal services. We need a robust plan that ensures that right now, with California having 24% of the US homelessness, but only receiving 13% of federal funding, we actually have the resources, the know-how, the community-based supports, and a regional approach to addressing not only homelessness, but affordable housing to ensure that everyone can stay homed with the dignity that they deserve.
Thank you. Okay, that was our last candidate for this question, and I'm going to announce a little change because one thing that we're noticing in our attempt to slot Malia Vella in during the questions, it's creating a lag and delay for the next person who is responding. So we will now change that, and Ms. Vella's responses will just play last as they were already recorded and would not have any change. So we hope all the candidates are okay with that, and we appreciate your flexibility. So now we are going to go to, Favor. I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, for our question number 3.
Thank you. And thank you again for all the candidates that are here today. Our third question is, what are your public safety priorities? And what specific changes would you make to improve policing in our state?
Okay, thank you very much. And our first respondent will be James Aguilar.
Yeah, so there's a lot of work that we have to do. I mean, we have to completely reprioritize the conversation on law enforcement in the state of California, meaning that, California needs to really step up its game in empowering communities to create police oversight committees and really, bring home that we need community-based alternatives to policing. Police should never interact with the mental health crisis. And that's one of the things that unfortunately happened with Stephen Taylor here in San Leandro. It's just got to stop. The killing of our Black brothers and sisters just has to stop. And so, those community-based alternatives are really what's going to shift the dynamic and the whole conversation. I also strongly believe in mental health services, getting California to increase funding as much as possible, and really start to shift the what do you call it, the diaspora of mental health in general, because it's not often talked about in political circles. I too also strongly believe in uplifting our communities to really come and speak out on these issues, because that's where we find a lot of the change in our cities that are unwilling to make the changes, is getting people into coalitions and really pressuring us as elected officials to make the change that we need in our 21st century.
Great, thank you so much. And now we will get the clock reset and we will hear from Victor Aguilar.
Thank you so much for asking this question. I think what we need to do is support SB2 to make sure that we're decertifying our police if there is a cop who murdered someone in a city, that they're not able to work in other cities and continue that and doing so in those particular cities. During my time as a San Leandro City Council member, I worked closely with residents to support the creation of civilian police oversight and other policies that reimagine and prioritize public safety. I wholeheartedly support holding police accountable for their misconduct, making sure that we're emphasizing a non-police response to mental health and behavioral health situations. We need to invest in public health and social services and prioritize restorative and transformative justice programs. We also need to, I support lowering the incarceration rate and providing more supportive re-entry services. And we need to dismantle the school to prison pipeline in all its forms. We need to decriminalize adult, voluntary, consensual sex work and abolish the death penalty. We need to also end mandatory minimum sentencing, expand legal protections for vulnerable populations, and decriminalize certain hallucinogenic substances and support Senate Bill 519.
Thank you. Okay, Stephen Slauson will be up next.
Yes, I support police reform. More specifically, I support adding more police to everybody's police force. The amount of violence that's going on in our community cannot be tolerated. On the other hand, we need better trained police. More specifically, we need to ban chokeholds, we need to ban neck holds, and we need to have the policy of a police officer reporting for duty with live ammunition in his gun stopped. More specifically, no police officer shall report for duty with live ammunition in his gun. He shall have rubber bullets. We have several good examples of Blacks being used as target practice for a tiny group of cops who could have done a better job by having rubber bullets in their gun or just shooting him in the leg. They didn't have to shoot him, they didn't have to kill him. That man in the Walmart in San Leandro could be alive today if he was shot with a rubber bullet. So that's where we are, and that's where my position is, and I shall seek legislation in the state to do just that.
Thank you. Okay, and now we will hear from Nelsie Bautista. Nelsie, can you see the clock?
No.
Okay, I'll let you know when it's going to start. There you go.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I want to remind everyone that current state law requires that we actually have peace officers. That is really important because we're not seeing that at BART stations, hence the reason why we unfortunately had an officer kill Oscar Grant. And then you're of course seeing what happened to even, Stephen Taylor as well in San Leandro, and even with, many hundreds by the month, basically, across this nation. And so it's important that the state of California reminds everyone we are supposed to be having police officers be trained peace officers on platforms like BART or in the community in general. So excessive use of force must be immediately investigated. Full restitution for families who lost a loved one during a police-involved homicide. I also want to work on that. Strengthening and updating whistleblower laws for civilians and active duty service members and veterans to be able to report orderly misconduct without fear of retaliation. Proper training on recruitment strategies, similar to the recent Camden, New Jersey program that was built on a foundation of ethics that fellow United Nations Associations members and I had advocated for, and we would love to see that here in California as well. Also, the encouragement of the county and city law enforcement funds to be allocated towards
and that is your time.
Youth and family services. Thank you.
Okay, and next up will be Mia Bonta. Mia, I will let you know when the clock begins, and then you'll get notices in your chat as far as when we're at 30 and 5 seconds. Okay, there you go.
This moment is calling on us to really reconstruct our public safety system. We all know that we're at a breaking point where the trust between our community, especially the Black and brown community, and law enforcement just isn't there. You can't have trust without accountability, and we need oversight, transparency, and consequences for officers and law enforcement agencies, and for officers to be held to account when they transgress and commit crimes or misconduct against the public. Reconstruction for me means that we're instituting alternative to police measures so that people in crisis are met with care and not force, funding violence prevention departments to reduce homicide, creating a statewide framework to address and establish non-police emergency response units, and funding units whether it's the Department of Transportation or Public Works are used to promote unarmed civilians for traffic enforcement or other community ambassador programs, so that we're using people and not police to be able to ensure that our communities can go about their day. And we need to end the school to prison pipeline by removing our police from our schools and redirecting resources to ensure that we have a full, robust system to support our students and recognize the bias that we have. And we also absolutely need to have greater police accountability, which is why I support Senator Bradford's SB2, which will allow us to decertify police and ensure that law enforcement officers are held to account when they conduct misconduct against the people in their county, and that they can't pop them in one county when they've done so.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, and now we will hear from Jennani Ramachandran. And again, I will let you know when the clock begins, and then you'll get notices in chat as far as your 30 and 5 seconds. Okay, the clock has begun. Do we have Jennani?
Yes. 1,172 people died at the hands of police last year, and I want to make sure that every one of their families attain justice. I want to work towards a world where people have options to keeping them safe that doesn't only involve the police. Having spent my legal and social work career working with individuals experiencing mental health crisis, working with unhoused communities, serving survivors of domestic violence, I have seen people harmed because they didn't have these options. And even for those who did want the police involved, they suffered extremely poor and responses that were not trauma informed. So I support funding alternatives. I was an advocate for the Crisis Act last year, which unfortunately failed. I am a volunteer with APTT's MH First program. I've served on the board of Men Creating Peace for the past several years. I believe in I've worked with the San Quentin Restorative Justice Project, and I believe in these alternatives because they work and they have life-changing outcomes. I also believe we need to support accountability and ending qualified immunity for all officers who cause harm, expanding access to police records, and implementing policies that's going to address the root causes of violence. Thank you.
Thank you. Then finally, we're scheduled to have Malia Vella recording play last, so we will do that this time, and then from this point forward, we will do the same thing because that does take a little bit of extra technology time.
The reason I'm not going to be able to be here tonight live is because I am working on this issue and alternatives to calls for service that don't involve violent crimes. Calls for service where somebody may be experiencing a moment of crisis or need some assistance. We need to make sure that we have a non-police alternative, that we are able to send clinicians, mental health experts, EMTs, paramedics, other non-armed personnel to make sure that we respond with care and not with police. I think it's really important that we do this at the state level. We need more funding into this. We also need to right size our departments and demilitarize them. It's something that I've led on as a city council member, and in doing so, did that through a community-led process that really centered BIPOC voices. Additionally, I think overall in reimagining safety, we need to move to systems that are non-carceral. We need to move some of our funding out of DOJ and CDCR so that it's not being administered that way, just like we're doing with juveniles. And we need to see more accountability and transparency. I very much support the repeal of the Copley decision to allow for this, and think at a state level, we need to allow for community oversight.
Okay, great. So next, I would like to see, we're at Mabel Minnie. She will be introducing our fourth question of the evening, and Victor Aguilar will be our first speaker. So if we can bring Mabel up, that would be great. There we go.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here and again. And our fourth question is, do you believe that the California legislature has a role in addressing climate change? And if so, what specific actions would you take as a state legislator?
Wonderful. Thank you for asking that question. Yes, the state does have influence and making sure that we address climate change, and that's part of my platform. I believe in environmental justice and making sure that we are investing in the training and salaries and full benefits of new green energy jobs. We also need to push in and make sure that we have access to clean air and water. And we need to begin the transition to public ownership of the California power grid. We need to be proactive in measures for prevention of wildfires and deforestation through comprehensive forest management. We need to confront the disproportionate impacts of California's climate crisis that's placed on marginalized communities. We need to end fracking in California. We also need to protect our state national parks and wildlife reserves. And we need to make sure that we have a commitment to exceeding carbon emission reduction goals for our state. Lastly, we need to make sure that we have funding for cities and counties to aid local mitigation and resiliency efforts. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, we'll get that clock reset and then hear from Stephen Slauson.
Yes, I support the state of California and taking a proactive approach to cleaner air and cleaner water. This is my idea of climate change. We want cleaner air and cleaner water. Now, there's nothing you're going to do regarding eliminating fossil fuels to cool down the Earth. Earth is going through its natural ice age cycles. It's going to get a little warmer and it's going to get a little colder. It's been getting warmer for the last 12,000 years. But we can do something about cleaning up the air. We can make the fuels burn cleaner. We can invent a catalytic converter that will separate carbon monoxide from carbon to oxygen. We can take these steps and do something to make life here for the people who actually live in California better. And I do support fracking. I do support gas drilling. It is cheaper to heat your water here with gas than it is electricity, no matter what they're telling you. And I do not support subsidizing any green energy projects like wind farms or solar farms. If they're such great ideas, they can stand on their own 2 feet and pay for their own way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then next we will hear from Nelsie Bautista. And Nelsie, I will let you know when the clock starts and then you'll get those notices. Great, thank you so much. Okay, there you go.
Great. So yes, I am actually currently working with the Green New Deal consensus on pushing the bar on green transportation, even in the federal infrastructure bill, with a company that's working directly with the U.S. Department of Energy. And I will say this, that we discovered solar powered transit is actually a fraction of the cost compared to even the electrical that the current U.S. federal infrastructure bill is actually pushing for. And so we want to push the bar on that to show that if you have existing solar transit that can be on an existing track, you can actually become a feeder to BART, a feeder to AC Transit, a feeding to the surrounding communities that can also power even street lights, for instance. Those kinds of reimbursements that we are not seeing in the community at all, not even with traditional transit. And so we want to assist traditional transit in being able to meet those reimbursement requirements, right? Also reducing greenhouse gas emissions so that our businesses are not getting sued. We have municipalities like Oakland that have a 2025 greenhouse gas emissions reduction requirement. That's in 4 years from now. So we have to meet those requirements or else our PLA agreements will not be meeting the Cal EPA's proper standards. They will not be meeting the environmental standards and our businesses will be getting sued. And that's my main concern around those, as well as with not receiving any reimbursements coming back.
Okay, thank you. That's good time. Thank you so much. All right, we will now hear from Mia Bonta. And Mia, I will let you know as soon as the clock resets. I think you know the routine now. Okay, there you go.
Thanks. Absolutely, we need California to step up in this moment, and we need an advocate in this district to ensure that we have somebody who's focused on environmental justice and standing up for communities of color that for far too long have borne the brunt of the pollution and environmental degradation caused by big oil and multinational corporations. I support a full ban on fracking, and I will fight to protect California's coast and wildlife, support clean energy investments, and push for stricter environmental regulations in order to protect our planet for our children and our grandchildren. Additionally, parts of Oakland, Alameda, and San Leandro will be underwater in the coming decades without a dramatic reversal in rising global temperatures and sea levels. And we need to be able to do our part by ensuring that we are decarbonizing our economy. I think in the 18th Assembly District, we have the Port of Oakland, we have the Oakland International Airport, and major freeways that are causing harmful emissions and hurting our health and surrounding communities. So I strongly endorse as one important measure the California Climate Jobs Plan to create 1 million good, clean jobs in California, invest in energy and efficiency and clear power productions, and begin a just transition for fossil fuel workers. The California Climate Plan is endorsed by SEIU California and the Labor Council that has also endorsed me.
Thank you. Okay, and so next we will hear from Jennani Ramachandran. And Jennani, again, I will let you know as soon as the clock gets started. So we can get going. Okay, just one moment. There you go.
I'm proud to be the only candidate in this race with the sole endorsement of environmental justice groups, including the Sunrise Movement, 350 Bay Area Action, Communities for a Better Environment, that have all called me a climate champion, because I'm not just going to say I care about the environment, I'm going to prioritize environmental justice. And that starts with refusing to accept oil and gas money, which 70% of our state Democratic lawmakers do. That starts with refusing to accept PG&E money, which 95% of our state lawmakers do, and blocks progressive green energy bills from being passed. So firstly, I am going to implement a Green New Deal, not 20 years from now, but now, so we can get to a carbon neutral California, create hundreds of thousands of well-paying jobs, but most importantly, do all of this with an equity lens that prioritizes communities most impacted by decades of environmental racism. In East Oakland and parts of West Oakland, a Black child is 6 times more likely to suffer asthma and will breathe 46% more nitrogen dioxide. So we need to think not only about emission-free vehicles in the hills, but in the flatlands. I will also prioritize accountability for corporate polluters along the lines of SB 260s, ban fracking and implement buffer zones along the lines of SB 467, and implement just transition.
Thank you very much. Now we will hear from James Aguilar.
All right. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm 21, so I come from the generation of people who are going to inherit the consequences of the climate crisis. And just on that alone, I've been working with local nonprofits and our school district to really push the envelope on how we're mitigating the climate crisis. I've been on the foot to make sure that we're committing ourselves to making sure that we're addressing it heads on, through energy efficiency, through funding in many different areas. But in the legislature, I really want to take a focus on making sure that we pass a California Green New Deal. That's going to be super important, especially in aspects of holding the wealthy accountable to climate. And making sure that we really put our money where our mouth is and get this issue, get it afloat and start to make some good change. And I think a lot of that will come from lifting people out of their cars and into public transit. So definitely one of my big things is clean transit and making sure that we provide the incentive for expansion and any necessary infrastructure improvements that will promote green transit. That goes for housing too. We've got to incorporate climate in housing. We've got to incorporate climate in every single thing that we do because it's just going to be the reality that we face. My home's going to be underwater in the next couple of decades if we don't move forward on it.
Thank you very much. And I think with that, we will now go back and we will pull up the recording for Malia Vella.
Every level of government has a responsibility to address climate change, especially the state legislature. We need to do things like addressing the fact that over 40% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from single occupancy vehicles. And we need to make sure that we're seeing a commitment to fleet upgrades for all of our public service sectors, to zero emission vehicles. It's a commitment that we made while I was on city council. We also need to see us set the goals that we know need to be set that are going to really push for transformative change and reductions. We also need to see more representation from our BIPOC community, our impacted communities. We know that we need to expand things like the number of seats on our air quality boards and things like that to really have some community input to allow for that conversation to happen so that we can actually see a little more effort going into making sure that we're addressing climate change. Additionally, we've seen this on a lot of different projects, setbacks to address for adaptive sea levels along our shorelines, decarbonization in building and 100% electrification. Those were things that we did as council members, as I did as a council member with our climate action and resiliency plans. Those are the types of things that the state needs.
Okay, great. Now, while that's getting squared away, we are going to go on to our final question, and we will hear from Jada Gray as far as what that question will be, and then we will go to Stephen Slauson as our first candidate responding to the question.
Great, thank you. And for our final question, do you support the expansion of ranked choice voting for more local elections in California? And what other ideas do you have to improve voting access and equity in our state?
Okay, so we're going to go to Stephen Slauson, and then if we can reset that clock.
I do not support ranked choice voting. This is another cumbersome voting regulation that we don't need. We also don't need the primary and the final voting. We should just have one election. Right now, we could wrap this whole situation up with one election on June 29th and be done with it. All you've done with this primary and final is double the cost of running for office. This is not the way you want to do it. You want to have the candidates not worry about any financial burden of running for office. If you are a candidate looking to run for Assembly District right now and want to put a ballot statement on the ballot, you're looking at 10 to 20 grand just to run for office. You don't need this. I have no other ideas at this time for voter access. I don't think you need to do anything else. We have mail-in voting. We have in-place voting. That seems to be enough for us right now. I don't think I can name any particular community or district that can't get to the voting place. It's good. Leave it alone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so we will now reset the clock and turn to Nelsie Bautista. I'll let you know as soon as the clock gets reset. There you go.
Great. So I'm actually all for ranked choice voting, and I'm definitely open for more democracy, especially down on the local level. And I have to say, it was also an honor to support Oakland Youth Vote, allowing as young as 16-year-olds to be able to vote in the school board races. That was really just not just memorable, it was emotional for me, because we know that the foundation of our human rights come from our voting rights. This is the most crucial aspect for civil engagement, even when candidates cannot necessarily involve themselves in issues. We know that through civic engagement, we actually can, through civil engagement, civic engagement, that's how we're able to get work done. Aside from all of that, I also do want to continue to encourage people to go ahead and run, even without money. I joined this race as a write-in candidate with $0 in the race. I had only two and still only have two friends who gave. One gave $99 and another friend gave $25, and I am still in the race. So you can do it with people power 100%. I was Bernie Sanders' field director in 2020, and you can do it with 100% people power. And so I'm proud to say that the expansion of democracy is definitely needed, not smaller government, and definitely not the smaller race with fewer candidates.
Thank you.
Running. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, wait a minute. I marked the wrong box. Sorry. So now we will turn to Mia Bonta. And again, I will let you know as soon as that clock starts. Now.
I absolutely support ranked choice voting. It's what we've had in Oakland for a while, and we see that happening in cities like New York, where it matters. I think we also need to ensure that we have an opportunity to be able to have voters be able to execute their voice. Right now, we're running in a special election, and we know that voters aren't going to be turning out at the levels that they need to for such an important decision, and that's a shame. So we do need to ensure that we continue to have the mail-in ballots that California has instituted, which I think is a step in the right direction, of course, and have that be something that's extended for every vote. We also, I think, need to ensure that our voters are recognized. Having younger voters, I think as young as 16 should be something that we should consider. And we also need to ensure that people who are involved in our incarceral system are a part of our voting public, because of the kinds of racial inequities that we see and the overrepresentation of Black and Brown people in our incarceral system. So absolutely believe that we need to exercise our vote because that's our voice, and do everything that we can to ensure that we have more voters, not fewer, particularly given the systemic racism that we've all have all had to suffer through over the last many decades.
Thank you. Okay, we will now go to Jennani Ramachandran. And I'll let you know as soon as that clock has been reset. There you go.
Yes, I absolutely support ranked choice voting so that it gives diverse candidates like me a chance. People who don't come from families of money and political power. I had absolutely no political connections 6 months ago, and now I have the most number of endorsements from Oakland-based member organizations. I believe firmly that years of experience in the political system doesn't make one necessarily a good lawmaker. Look to no one else but our own president, Joe Biden, and AOC, who were elected to federal office at my age, 29, without political experience. But what they had was hardships in their life that made them resilient in the way that diverse candidates like me, who have experienced that same hardship and resilience in life, deserve a chance, and ranked choice voting can help you get there. Secondly, when I served on the Oakland City Public Ethics Commission, we administered public financing. That's another tool to help candidates who are corporate free, like me, diversify the pool. If elected, I would be just 1 in 3 tenants out of 120 lawmakers, yet this district, the 18th Assembly District, has 60% of our population be tenants. And finally, I would implement democracy dollars, which the Public Ethics Commission has also proposed, so individuals can decide who they're able to elect by getting $100 to go towards their candidate of choice, because our elections right now are being bought by corporations and people deserve a voice.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, now we will turn to James Aguilar.
Yeah, so first, I think it was brought up earlier, there are so many barriers to even running for office in the first place. $9,000 for a ballot statement, $1,100 for just filing with the registrar of voters. So we've got to remove the barriers to run for office, period. As far as ranked choice voting goes, the city of San Leandro has had ranked choice voting for many years now, and it's been largely successful. And it opens a group of diverse, people running for office. So I'm absolutely in support of ranked choice voting in the state of California as a whole. We've got to go beyond that, though. We've got to absolutely support the framework that's already been set out by Assemblymember Alex Lee, AB 20, to make sure that we get money out of politics and we start to move toward publicly financed elections so that we can actually elect people from our communities. Elect low-income tenants, people who are young and LGBTQ, all of many intersecting experiences that we need in politics right now. It's the barriers baffle me, is what I'm trying to say. The government is built against people of color, and people of low-income backgrounds like me who decided to run for this office to raise light to these issues. So there's a lot of work to do as far as elections go, and it has to be done through a whole 360 perspective.
Thank you. And then we will have Victor Aguilar respond to that. Hey, Victor, just a second. There you go.
Thank you so much. Yes, California League of Women Voters, I absolutely do support ranked choice voting, not only at the municipal level, but at the federal, state, and all local levels. James had mentioned that this race it's expensive to run it. I mean, I spent $11,000 just to get on the ballot to have a candidate statement. Whereas I don't have a wealthy husband. I don't have wealthy family members to donate to my campaign. There's a lot to say, and it's tough when you're not taking corporate money. I'm not in bed with corporations. I'm running a corporate-free campaign, not accepting fossil fuel money, gas, oil money, charter school money. And this is something that we need to change. And this is something that we need to change now in order to give progressives like us a chance at the table to make sure that we're having our voices heard and that the community picks the right person. I'm unbossed, and we need to get the money out of politics.
Okay, thank you. So while we are pulling up Ms. Vella's response, first I want to tell the candidates, thank you for your patience. We are running a little late. We will do your closing statements, but we want to apologize for extending your time. We know you're all very busy. And also to the attendees, thank you for hanging in there. We have a great number of people viewing in, so please hang in there for those, for our closing statements for our candidates. They, I know, would appreciate your time, and they certainly deserve all of our time and attention. So I believe now we will go to, we should have the recording for Ms. Vella's final, her answer to the final question. I'm not seeing that pulled up. There we go.
So there's a lot of different things. I very much think that it's very difficult, and as a woman of color, I speak from experience of how difficult it is to run for office. I've appreciated the state making changes so that childcare can be a covered expense for campaign expenditures, but I think we need to go further. Some things other countries have done are shortening the time period that people can actually campaign, so you don't spend years campaigning, but only a handful of months. Making sure that our campaigns are publicly funded, capping expenditures, things like that. I think we need to find ways to take money out of politics and really have it be about the issues. Having more earned media like these forums, I think, are really important, where we can really hear where the candidates stand on the issues, and we can see the experience that folks bring to actually getting things done. I think that's really important to removing barriers. I do support ranked choice voting, especially where we see in a number of different cities and localities, we see the community not being well represented. We know that ranked choice voting and also district elections really help sometimes to allow for our diverse communities to be represented in government. And those are things that I very much support. I also think we need to take corporate money out of politics in the state of California. I very much support that. We do that at the federal level. If you're a federal candidate, you cannot take money from corporations, and I haven't for this.
Do the timer.
Okay, that is great. So that is the last of our questions. And so now we are going to move on to the closing statements from the candidates. And though I am disappointed that we weren't able to hear from Joel Britton, who was unable to show, it does mean that now the first person to be presenting their closing statement will be Nelsie Bautista, and this way everyone had a chance to go first, and so it all worked out in the end. So we can bring Nelsie up and then reset the clock. And Nelsie, I'll let you know as soon as that gets going, and you'll have 1 minute for your closing statement. And don't worry about thanking us. Use your time. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you so much. So I just want to say thank you again to the League of Women Voters. Thank you to the Martin Luther King Jr. Freedom Center, to the youth, to everyone here for giving me even the opportunity, even as a write-in candidate, to just push the bar, get the message out, and just really support the expansion of democracy. Also reminding everyone, again, we've done all the work that we've achieved so far with little to no dollars. We can continue to go in that direction of being corporate free and having big money out of politics, understanding that compassion needs to be at the forefront of all of the decisions that we make, bringing community to the table. A great leader is a great listener, and I'm always there to listen. I will always be there, and I will always be supportive of community's voice coming even before mine, as I do with all of the organizing work that I've done over the years. And so I encourage you again to take a look at my website. You will see all the reform that was achieved on little to no dollars.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will now hear from Mia Bonta for her 1 minute closing statement. And I'll let you know as soon as your time starts. And now.
I'm Mia Bonta. I was raised by progressive activists who were making the same demands for justice that we're still making 50 years later. And my experience and values, the work I've done in my community, my work as a policymaker at the local level, and my participation in the legislative process in Sacramento has earned me the endorsement of including labor organizations like CTA, the California School Employees Association, SEIU California, Latino Caucus, the Black Caucus, the Secretary of State Shirley Weber, many local leaders, and Congresswoman Barbara Lee. This district deserves someone who's had lived experience, who's someone who has been a tested legislator locally. And I'm running because we have work to do, and our representation, our experience, and our voice matters now more than ever.
Great. Thank you so much. Now, so next we're going to go to Jennani Ramachandran, and I, as moderator, am going to say before we start her clock, I've been doing my very best, but I know I have not been doing a great job in pronouncing your name. So before you get started, I would love to give you that opportunity, and then I will let you know as soon as the clock has started.
No worries. It's Jennani Ramachandran.
Thank you so much. I knew I was maybe close, maybe, but I knew that that it was not accurate. Okay, so if we can get that timer going.
I am driven to run for state assembly because of the voices of our community members that I am part of and those that I have served that have been drowned out by our racist and inequitable systems. Tenants who have been evicted even in the middle of this pandemic, individuals experiencing mental health crisis, victims of abuse. And I want to take the direct service advocacy I've done right here in Oakland for communities and translate that into a statewide platform for justice. Join me and join the powerful groups that have given me their sole endorsement, including Indivisible East Bay, ILWU, Oakland East Bay Democratic Club, Wellstone Democrats, Oakland Tenants Union, Our Revolution, the East Bay Times, Sunrise Movement, CWA, multiple former Black Panthers, Congressman Ro Khanna, former Oakland City Council members, and more. Let's work together to achieve justice and build a California that works for every single one of us.
Thank you. Okay, and now we will have go to James Aguilar for his closing statement.
When I was 18, I did something not every high schooler does as they're about to walk the stage. I ran for school board. And that's been a journey. It's been something wild. And, you know, just being a student board member and a school board member has taught me that we need to value education. We need to actually support our educators, our students, if we're going to move forward in society. That's why I'm endorsed by former Superintendent Delane Easton. We're changing the dynamic in California. We're going to make change together. You know, I'm not running for me. I'm running for you. I'm running for us, and I'm running for our community because I understand my roots. I'm rooted in Oakland. I'm rooted in Alameda, and I'm rooted in San Leandro. I know the issues before us, and despite my age of 21, I have a lot of experience. I have years of experience in education and through the local nonprofits that we have here in the Bay Area. I thank you for your time, and please reach out to me, jamesforcalifornia.com.
Thank you. All right, and Victor, I'll let you know as soon as that clock is reset and you can get going. There you go.
Thank you so much, everybody, for this opportunity to speak today. I am San Leandro City Council Member Victor Aguilar, currently Vice Mayor, and I'm asking for your support to be your next Assembly member for California District 18. Our state has great promise. With Democratic majorities in both houses of our legislature, we should be at the forefront of passing laws that provide protections for low-income and working families. Honestly, I'm perplexed on why this is not happening more. We need to do more than just nibble around the edges. We need bold policies that will transform the daily lives of all Californians. The types of policies that help put healthy food on the table, that make sure we don't become homeless when we get sick. We must build a California where everyone is included, not only in the promise of equal opportunity, but pushes for equity of outcomes. We need universal health care. We need safe and affordable housing. We need an equitable criminal justice system, and we need these things for everyone.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And then we will now hear from Stephen Slauson. I will get that clock reset, and then Stephen, you can give your closing statement. I'm not seeing Stephen on the screen, so.
I don't think Stephen is here. I don't see him.
Okay, well, it's, okay, so why don't, in that case, if he pops back in, we'll get him. But in the meantime, if, while we're getting candidate Vella's closing statement together, I'll just say, you know, we are running late. We thank you all for your patience and hanging in there. 132 of you have stayed till the end, and we do appreciate it. Again, I'd like to thank all the partners who pulled this together, League of Women Voters of Oakland, the Eden chapter, as well as the Alameda chapter, and of course, the Martin Luther King Jr. Freedom Center. These are all great organizations. If you're looking to volunteer, there are opportunities. We, of course, would always appreciate having your membership or contributions to our organizations so we can continue to do the work. And most importantly, let's get out there, vote, and be working to do everything we can to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to vote. So if we can now pull up, if we have that ready, Ms. Vella's closing statement, and then we'll just do a quick goodbye at the end and let you all go. And thank you to the candidates. We'll get that in at the end.
Thank you very much to the League of Women Voters and the MLK Freedom Center for hosting this forum tonight. I wish I could have been here in person, but I'm at a city council meeting, really making sure that our budget gets passed, that it reflects our community values, and that we're really moving to a care first model as opposed to a cops first model in the city of Alameda. My name is Malia Vella. I'm the vice mayor of the city of Alameda. I was overwhelmingly reelected this past November. I'm also a workers' rights attorney, an activist, a professor at Mills College, and the elected representative for Assembly District 18, Oakland, Alameda, and San Leandro to the California Democratic Party. I will continue to push for progressive change as I have as an elected council member, making sure that we move the state forward to an equitable response to the COVID-19 pandemic, leaving no one behind, making sure that we build housing for all, take care of our unhoused community, and address climate change as I have done on city council. I hope for your vote.
Okay, and once again, most importantly, we really want to thank the candidates. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for running for office. This is an enormous undertaking. Most importantly, thank you for your willingness to serve. If elected, we appreciate all that is done. And that, I think, is it for us tonight, unless, Rachel, there's anything else. Otherwise, again, we apologize for some of the complications, but we made it through.
Nothing else from me. Thanks so much, everybody.